Okay, and we've gone live now.
Thanks, Joe. Well, welcome to this evening's meeting of Overview and Scrutiny, everybody. Have we got any apologies? Looks as though we've got a full house, but
I've not received any apologies, no.
good, okay.
Tony, only one thing from me. In actual fact, I have to leave at about 6:15. I've got to go for a medical appointment.
Okay, thanks, Ray. Right.
Chair, sorry, is Councillor Jupp with us? Because I believe he was trying to get in, but I can't see him present.
No, I can't either.
He's just joining now, actually.
That's fine, great.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Joe.
Right. You've all had the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any problems with that, or can I sign that as a true record at an appropriate time in the future? I'll take that as an acceptance. Yes. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest for anyone to declare? No? Okay. Announcements. I've just got one announcement that we're going to change the running order very slightly. So we're going to take agenda item 8 before agenda item 7, because agenda item 7 is purely a briefing session for councillors, which will be an exempt session. So it makes more sense to take that at the end. Okay. Corporate plan and priorities. Jane, did you want to introduce this?
Only to say this is your usual report. Unfortunately, it's the end of December date, although the financial figures are later than that, in being the end of January. And happy to try and answer any questions. You'll be pleased to note with Brian Elliott here tonight, if you've any detailed questions on the capital programme, I'm sure he'll be pleased to answer them.
Okay.
He's going to hate me for that.
Should we go through the appendices in order? So if anyone's got anything on the KPI report first, if you'd like to put your blue hand up. No. I've just got one question, if I may. It's about complaints, and is there any member involvement in the complaints process? I mean, we see a number there, but I know in industry complaints are regarded as a very key part of the business and are used to drive improvements. But just seeing a number, I just wonder whether there ought to be more member involvement.
No, there isn't actually member involvement. There's a monthly report that goes to the senior leadership team, so the officer leadership team, which has a full breakdown of complaints by the different services. But in terms of member involvement, that would only be if anyone picked up, say I had a massive peak in revs and bends, which is always my biggest complaint area, then I would discuss it with the cabinet lead. So it'd really be down to the individual director then to raise those questions with the cabinet member if there were a problem. I would expect if there were you noticed a peak in these figures, then you could call in the detail, obviously.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that there might be some complaints there that hit the fan, if you like, quite late in the day, and members would possibly benefit from being aware that something was happening a little earlier in the
obviously, as directors, we do tell councillors if there are particular issues. So if we get a complainant within their ward who is persistent or of concern, then we do tend to discuss them individually, but not as an entirety. That examination of the patterns of complaint is with the senior leadership team at the moment.
Okay. Maybe it's something for ONS to think about at some point in the future as a maybe as a task in Finnish groups to look at whether we think there should be more member involvement. But I'll leave that for the moment. Is there anything else on the KPI report that anyone wants to bring up? Mike Croker.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a question regarding index FS07, percentage of invoices paid on time. Thinking about cash flow, is there a sort of corresponding percentage of money outstanding, which would seem to be more relevant for cash flow rather than the number of naughty people? Thank you.
Sorry, Jane, you're muted.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the FS07 is about number of invoices we pay on time. And it was a government requirement to have this as an indicator. So what it's doing is indicating how fast we pay our invoices, because the government was keen in terms of cash flow of other organisations that the council paid quickly. As an accountant, and even more so for Glenn as a private sector accountant, that almost seems counterintuitive, because what you're actually doing is damaging your cash flow in order to help somebody else's. But that is the indicator as it stands.
Thank you. That explains all. Yes, my apologies for asking a silly question.
Councillor Jupp.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not quite sure whether this comes actually under this heading or the whole performancing. I was reading one of the local Sussex newspapers, and it talked about Mid Sussex District Council writing off a debt that it felt it was owed by Horsham District Council. I think it was over £100,000, and I made the assumption that it was something to do with the census problems we had a year or two ago. I wondered whether or not the director could confirm that this has been the case and where it is shown in the accounts. Thank you.
Yeah, it was to do with the breakup of census. It was shown in the accounts. It will be coming out this year. At the time, Mid Sussex believed we owed it. We believed we didn't, and declined to pay it.
Well, I'm very pleased we have declined, bearing in mind the cost that census arrangement inflicted upon us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
3 points. Number one, Councillor Jupp raised census. For the new people on the committee, we used to have our revs and benefits operated on or administered by Mid Sussex. I won't bore you with the terrible mathematical way that was worked out, but cut a long story short, all the three councils who Mid Sussex were working on it showed overpayments, and technically we all incurred costs. Anyway, at the end of it, Mid Sussex had demanded a huge sum of money from us, and the director had correctly assessed that it wasn't appropriate. So we stood our ground, and the net result is, of course, they've had to write it off. Councillor Croker mentioned invoices. That invoice figures pretty much as it's been for about the past 100 years. In actual fact, it's a good achievement. It's really up there where it should be. On the question of complaints, can the director remind me? I'm sure I sit in so many ruddy committees I lose track as well. Was it standards, or was it finance PDAG where a report on the complaints or an outline of the annual report of complaints was discussed?
I think it used to go. Do you remember Overview and Scrutiny used to have a finance and performance subcommittee? I think the report that now goes to the senior leadership team used to go to that subcommittee some years ago. Yeah,
but when that one disappeared, it definitely came somewhere else. I've definitely seen it either in finance, PDAG or standards. Anyway, to go back to the chairman's point, it would be a total waste of time to have a task and finish group on complaints. And the reason is this: certainly the last time I saw it, which was in the last 16 months, it was an astonishing record. I well remember the officers were quite rightly so, who were involved in it, very pleased with themselves. Our success rate, or in fact, the lack of complaints was a major factor. And any reference up to higher bodies, ombudsmen or others, was negligible. So it is an area that's going reasonably well, which does reflect well on the officers' performances. So I don't believe there's any need to look into that at all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Brian. See no further hands for Appendix A. Anything on Appendix B? Councillor Haig.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the budget monitoring and forecast outturn. I think that's Appendix B.
Yeah.
The debtors, I'm concerned by the 33% increase in aged debtors compared to 2020, and especially the 150k increase in debts over 90 days. Now, I recognise that the council is taking all steps possible to reduce this, and I know I understand it's arisen because of COVID, and it's good that we've actually got Brian Elliott here. He may want to comment about it. But what I was concerned about is, has the council got enough aged debt, bad debt provision to cover the increased debt?
We reset the aged debt provision as we close the account, so we'll be resetting it in April and May. So if we think the increase is enough to have to increase it, then we'll do it as part of closing.
Okay, thank you. And is Brian Elliott able to comment any more about the actual source of all that debt that we've got?
There are a number of tenants who haven't paid rents that are due, and some of them have refused to negotiate with us. They're just choosing to withhold rent, and we're not in a position where we can force recovery of any arrears because of the government policy on that.
Thank you.
Can I just also say, Chairman, that you may remember we have a shortage of court dates this year. So even on council tax and business rates, we've only had 2 court dates this year, both in December, and we've been told by the courts there will be no more. So all our debt collection revenues and benefits, well, revenues mostly, far outweigh any of our own sundry debt, which is the debt on this report. We cannot take a hard line because there is no court, so we can't.
Right. Councillor Donnelly.
Well, of course, and there's one of our favourite names, Rookwood Golf Club, who's been a substantial debtor for many, many years and should have been closed down years ago. It's totally inappropriate that a private operator is able to take advantage of taxpayers' assets and funds to make profits for themselves. So I think that the sooner we build in Rookwood, the better, because it's just hemorrhaging money, costing money to the council, and that capital asset is not making a return. And in terms of the statute obligations, the director and the cabinet member for finance, and for that matter, all members have a statutory duty to get value for assets. If we don't do so, we are at risk. And the other factor I will remind you yet again is that if we can't balance the books and a government administrator takes over, as happened in several councils in the last 6 months, I guarantee one of the first things they'll sell off is Rookwood, and we won't be able to use it for things that we're talking of at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Fortunately, we've got some good officers that ensure that our books do balance, and I hope that continues going forward. Councillor Noel.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question about the commercial rent debt. Is the council going to be in a position to recover a lot of these commercial rents as time goes on? Because obviously they will accrue the longer that lockdown lasts, and if we have another lockdown because of a third wave later this year, then it's just going to get worse and worse. So how do you envisage collecting these rents and the accruing debt that commercial individuals are accruing?
shall I respond to that? There will be negotiations with tenants as time goes on. I have seen some accounts from tenants which show that they have the capability of paying, the ability to pay off the debt, but they're choosing not to pay the debt. One would think that when the government restrictions on recovering debt are lifted, then we'll have more sensible negotiations with those tenants.
Yeah, I asked because a lot of these tenants have had the benefit of countless grants, not countless, but some tranches of grants given them by the government.
That's absolutely right. Some of them haven't traded for 12 months too. So it is extremely difficult. And some of them have lost stock. Some of them have problems on restarting, having to buy in stock to restart, particularly in the hospitality industry. So with each tenant, there's a unique set of circumstances for each tenant, and it's complicated. The vast majority of tenants have taken a very open and transparent discussion with us. There are a handful of tenants who are choosing not to discuss with us. These are generally multiple retailers who have been told by their head office not to pay any rents across the portfolio. So we're just a part of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bram. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you very much. I wonder whether one of the officers can either now or perhaps later in writing put in context Councillor Donnelly's assertion again that Rookwood is an ongoing bad debtor and that we are hemorrhaging cash into the business, and put it in the context of the receipts that we've been receiving each year as rent and business rates from them. I'm not clear what the position is, but we keep on hearing that we're hemorrhaging large sums of money to this business, and it would be useful to have that clarified. Thank you.
Point of information, Chairman.
Yes, Councillor Donnelly.
That information was released to the members under confidential wrap some time ago, not that long ago. So that information has already been given to councillors by an email. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that came from Councillor Clark, didn't it?
That's correct. Yes, that information is already in your inbox somewhere. Although if you're getting all the emails like several of us are getting, I've had 1,000 on the Buck Green thing at the moment. You may have difficulty finding anything. So I do have a certain degree of sympathy there. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Jupp.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder whether or not the head of property just could comment on whether or not any of the council's tenants who have declined to pay rent have insurance policies that might cover them for that payment of rent, and also because Horsham is the ground landlord of the Swan Centre. What is the position with the head lessee, part of Aviva? What is their role in collecting rents from, shall we say, tenants like Boots, who must be a large contributor to the rent roll, but are reputedly not paying rents on any properties? Thank you.
I don't know whether tenants have insurance policies. I have discussed insurance with one particular tenant who just told me the experience he'd had, and it is very difficult to get money from insurers under these policies. The second point with Aviva, at the moment they have not accounted to us for. They aren't due to account to us until October of each year, and they haven't accounted to us for the period up to October of last year. So my understanding is that there were very substantial arrears of rent at Swan Walk, which they'll need to recover again over time.
Thank you.
Okay, nothing further on that appendix. So the appendix C, which is the capital expenditure. Anything on that? There's one that I see. There's a budget of 400,000 for vehicles against an expenditure of 23,000, which I just wonder what's behind that. I think that's probably more for you, Jane, isn't it? Vehicles rather than. Sorry.
Yeah, whereabouts is that on the table, Councillor? I'm struggling to see it. It's probably my eyesight.
It's about a quarter of the way down after the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just an item on its own. A 400,000 budget, which we spent 6% in the year.
I honestly don't know, Councillor. I think I'll have to get you a written answer on that one.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lloyd.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just really going to ask about the boardwalk replacements, which are over budget 111%, and the Peers Place car park at 100%. I just wondered what the reasoning for those were.
Brian, is that something you could shed light on?
The Peers Place car park is actually in relation to it's complicated because of the way the budgets were put together, but that's in relation to the lift contract at the Forum and the old Peers Place, which was an extremely challenging contract. I'm happy. It's way too complicated for me to detail here. I'm happy to circulate a briefing note on that to members.
Chair, if I may, I don't really need the officers to spend a lot of time on it. I just wondered if it was likely to go up beyond that, or is that really just because it was a one-off cost? And
it won't go up beyond that, and we are taking action against the contractor with a view to recovering some money.
Then there's no need to spend any more time on it. What about the boardwalk replacements? 111%.
I'm not sure that's my budget, actually.
Okay, and South Water Car Park, I think, is included in
that. That wouldn't be my budget.
Okay.
We'll get you a written answer on that one.
Okay, look, it's not desperate. I just wanted to know if it was likely to go up even higher, because very often these budgets are based on maybe a one-off cost which is expended at the beginning of the year and doesn't get any greater. But thank you anyway.
I was briefly talking to Jane before the meeting and suggested that maybe it would be helpful on this report just to have an indicator that a project has been complete, so we know that the number we're looking at there is the final number, because it isn't always that obvious. Probably is to an accountant, but to the rest of us it's a little bit difficult. If we looked at a number and said, well, okay, they've overspent, but they're not going to spend any more, then we may be a bit more relaxed about it.
Exactly. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right. Appendix D, the revenue budget. Is there anything on that? Councillor Noel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just merely asking a question because it's such an astronomical figure that's jumping out there, which is the finance accountancy line. It says overspend due to restructure costs, and obviously restructuring happened before my time, but the overspend is actually 8,419% of the budget. So I'm just wondering if you give me a very, very quick rundown of what happened there. Thank you.
Yes, I'm not sure how reliable that how good that explanation is. What the finance and accountancy line includes is all our corporate budgets. So it actually includes the investments that we have, the cash investments, and it is them that are down substantially on the year. Plus there was one redundancy cost in there. The majority of that would not be the redundancy cost. It would be related to the less interest we had this year on our cash than we were expecting.
Okay, all right. Yes, it's obviously quite complicated. So yes, let's just leave it like that.
As you can imagine, Councillor, in March, the value of our investments in stock market, in banks and so on went down incredibly. It went down a huge amount. It is, I had a Treasury meeting this morning, it is back to close on even actually the value of the investments, but the interest that we've earned during the year isn't.
Good.
But even then, I couldn't tell you for sure, because of course the largest proportion of our payments come in on the 31st of March.
Okay.
So we'll be into April before we know for sure quite where that one's coming out.
So the capital is safe. It's just the income.
It's the income. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Jamie. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Jupp.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just looking at the leisure services overspend or deficit that we're having to incur this year, which is obviously caused by the closure of our leisure centres for COVID precautions. I just wondered whether or not the director could just clarify what is terms of revenue lost in income that we have from places for leisure, whatever they call themselves, and what was a payment to them because they were closed rather than a reduction in rent that we received. Are you able to give a guideline as to how those costs, that overrun is
roughly? My understanding was the monthly payment was around the 400,000 a month. So it is that plus the costs of reopening. So we had the cost of reopening in the autumn, and then there will be further costs obviously into next year when we can reopen again.
So these figures take us up to the end of December, don't they?
Yeah.
Do you have any guide as to what they will likely turn out to the end of March?
Sorry, these were the end of January. Well, there's not a lot more moving other than not getting the income now until the end of the current financial year. But there is, in negotiation, reopening costs for April.
Thank you.
Do we know what those are?
Okay. Councillor Wright.
Sorry, Chair. Are we on to Appendix E now?
Not quite, but if your question is on question E, let's move swiftly onto it because nobody else is. Yeah. So Appendix E, corporate plan update.
Brian, I just wondered if this is your area. You can forgive me if it's not. Work with partners to increase the number of electric vehicle charging points. Is that your area? No? Jane, is it possible if you can get me a written answer? Because I have asked, but I've been rebuffed.
So what is it you wanted to know about electric car charging points?
And we obviously were doing a tender. Which fell apart in the autumn for completely legitimate reasons.
Yes.
I have lots of my residents emailing me about the electric car charging points in Storrington, which have been broken for some time, coming up to now well over a year. And we were promised we'd get them fixed in the autumn because the tender fell apart and COVID, they haven't been. But I haven't had an update, and I was told there wasn't an ETA on when we would get that contract in place so those could be fixed.
Yeah, you see, it's not our contract, it's a county council contract.
Yes.
So I don't have control of it. It's not a contract my team's letting, it's a contract colleagues at county are letting. And my understanding is they're going back out again, but I don't know, and unless any of the county members here today have any knowledge from their other work.
I suppose it's a question for Nigel: is who can I badger at the county council so the good members of the good residents of Storrington can have their electrical vehicle charging back? He's muted, but I'm sure he's a very witty retort.
May I answer, Chairman?
Yes, please do, Nigel.
Well, the leader of West Sussex County Council, Paul Marshall, I think is your local West Sussex County Councillor.
He is, yes.
So I'm sure he'd give you an electric response as soon as you contact him.
Great idea. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Jane.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Jane, I don't know if you or anyone here can specify the infrastructure requirements that are necessary to make a station in our district on the rail line more feasible in the short or medium term. I'm assuming that's Gatwick and North, or perhaps it isn't. Perhaps it's dealing with single lines over viaducts, etc.
My understanding is it's Network Rail.
I think if this is going to continue to appear on the report, it would be helpful whether this is talking about the proposed station for the Legal and General, the proposed station east of Faygate, or the proposed station north of Pulborough. We seem to have proposed stations all over the district, and it was easy when there was only one, but there seem to be at least three that aren't going to happen. And I see there's a tick against that it's complete and it's not going to happen anytime soon, whichever one it is.
That would be my understanding, Chairman, yes.
Thank you.
No idea where those infrastructure enhancements need to be.
No.
Okay.
Are you talking about other than those three stations? Because the three stations were what was in the corporate plan about the new development.
The report states that the study concludes a new station on this line is not feasible in the short or medium term until infrastructure enhancements elsewhere on the line have been brought forward. And I'm just trying to find out if
you'd really need an answer from Catherine on that. I think she'd have been involved. Do you want me to get you one?
That would be good. Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do.
Thank you, Jane. Councillor Haigh.
Thank you. I was going to comment about the stations as well, so I can possibly help a little bit here. That I understand that this is to do with Horsham Express, Horsham Parkway and the Kilnwoodvale stations, which are supporting the strategic sites that are already underway. So we're not going to get stations anytime soon for those, and it's a question of, those may be 15 years, and it would help if the council could give us a statement about what's going to happen, because if those aren't being supported, can we expect any of the proposed strategic sites to get railway stations? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Croker.
Thank you. It's a question on the first line, the progress update. The last sentence, subject to elections / COVID-19, etc. Consultation therefore likely to commence Q1 2021. Is that really correct? I thought it was Q2/3.
This is in relation to the revised local plan, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
This report, bear in mind, is at the end of December. It may be out of date because things have moved on the local plan since the end of December.
I think that's the answer, Jane. Thank you again.
Okay, Mike. Councillor Jupp.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine was really just a comment. On page 27, under the theme of a thriving economy, we've got a red mark against the promotion of comprehensive calendar of events. Seems a bit harsh. They can't do anything with COVID. Surely that should be a more neutral colour. It's unfair to give it a red blob, in my opinion, but I'll just pass that on.
Suppose we are where we are as far as COVID's concerned. Okay, if that's everything on the corporate plan, shall we move on to item 6, Sustainable Task and Finish Group? The item on the agenda is to agree the membership of that group. And I believe that the proposed members are Mike Croker, obviously, Bob Platt, Ruth Fletcher, Tony Helpman.
Chairman, we're losing your voice.
Oh, sorry. I'm not quite sure how to overcome that, but thank you, Brian.
I think when you duck down, it's disappearing. It's fine when you're upright.
Yeah, it's because I'm trying to work off a bit of paper today. I'm sorry about that. So I gather the proposed membership is Mike Croker, Bob Platt, Ruth Fletcher, Tony Hopman, Gordon Lindsay, and Tim Lloyd. Is that correct? Mike, is there anything you want to say on this group today?
I don't think so, Chair. No, it's. I just want to find out who's on it, and hope Democratic Services will organise this in the appropriate fashion. Thank you.
Okay, so there's no sudden last-minute desire by any members of this group to join Mike on that. Right. Oh, Councillor Donnelly.
Chairman, we agreed to extend it from 3 to 6 months. So is that the given time now we're talking of?
I think so. Councillor Croker?
Well, in my submission, I had 6 to 12 months ticked.
12 months is too long. I mean, normally, and in our sort of standing regs for this, we in fact had 3 months, but at the last meeting, we said it could be quite a biggish one, and also with the coronavirus situation, hopefully over by then. But even so, that's a factor we had to consider. We did agree last time we would take it from 3 to 6 months. 12 months is just too much. I mean, that's just a never-ending story. And in fact, the advice of the scrutiny experts, both to us in writing and in the seminars, did say 3 months is the correct time. We had agreed that we'd do 6 months.
Yeah, I'm fine with 6, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll be getting some sort of interim progress report from you at the next meeting of this committee, so we will have some feel of how things are going then. Okay, now we're going to go to the work programme, item 8, which is, as you will see, is a suggestion from a member of the public, Mr. Michael Dyson, and he will be joining us hopefully in a moment. This is a difficult one. I hope you listen to him. I hope we can discuss how to take this forward in a sensible fashion. It's all hedged around with legal problems. The legal department have had various bits of legal advice that can't be put into the public domain. So let's hear what he has to say and then see how we can take this forward so that councillors get an opportunity to discuss this. Democratic Services, is Mr. Dyson available?
Can you hear me?
He's present in the meeting.
Mr. Dyson. Okay, so you have 2 minutes to make your points, and Joe will be giving you a nudge as you're getting towards the end of your time. Okay, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for giving me this time this evening, which was really prompted by a statement I saw from Rishi Sunak when he was the local government minister, where he predicted that authorities who welcome challenge and those that recognise the value that scrutiny can bring will reap the benefits. But this depends on a strong commitment all the way down from the top. And whilst I have absolutely no doubt that all council members have the best interest of Horsham residents at their core at all times, I do think that any decision on Rookwood requires a deep understanding of some very complex matters. And no member really can vote without fully understanding these matters, the matters which I've suggested in my submission. For example, there are respected voices, as we know, who say that Rookwood Golf has been a bad debt. But I hear from other people that I respect that they disagree. And I would suggest that there should be a study of the historic and forward-looking benefits of Rookwood Golf with input from reliable and hopefully public sources. If not, then behind closed doors. Secondly, and very importantly, I fear that the overage on Rookwood, which lapses in 2066, will deprive HDC of many tens of millions of pounds. And that really is far too much to ignore, in my opinion. I would ask that people please read the 1986 purchase agreement and look at the financial modelling with consideration to alternative funding if need be.
You have 15 seconds, Mr. Dyson.
Thank you. Finally, HTC are promoting a vision that is possibly undeliverable. My request to this committee is please study the points I've listed in my submission whilst there is still time. I think it's difficult for people to vote without that. If resource is an issue, I'm happy to help where I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Okay, so my feeling is that
Can't hear you.
Sorry, Brian, can you hear me now? My feeling is that this is a significant matter for this committee and for the council.
We still can't hear you, Chairman.
Right. Well, I'm bemused as to what to do in that case. I'll stop talking and I'll let the rest of the committee talk for the time being. So I've got one hand up at the moment, which is Councillor Donnelly.
Chairman, just
Chairman,
checking.
I could hear you, Chairman.
Only just.
No, most of us couldn't hear. If you check your volume control, it might have been dipped down.
No, I don't think so, but
It seems the closer you are to your camera, the louder you are.
yeah, well, that's where the microphone
Yeah,
is,
okay.
I hope. So, yeah. Okay. Councillor Donnelly, you put your hand up. I'll let you talk. I'll come back in later.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Has Mr. Dyson any declarations of interest that he should be advising us of?
Will I unmute for that? I'm a resident of Horsham. I'm a resident of Rookwood Park. I don't have any other interests.
Thank you.
Any conflicts.
So you live next to Rookwood?
I'm a resident of Horsham and I live in Rookwood Park, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Chair, I don't know where we go, because we obviously we received an email on the 10th of February with proprietary information that we've been asked not to share about the debts of the golf course. And that would make it very clear, I think, to Mr. Dyson and any other residents of why the golf course is in trouble and not good value for money for them, which obviously we can't share. So I wondered how we could have this debate about whether or not to have the task and finishing group in public, given that we can't mention the numbers involved in the email on the 10th of February. And I wondered if anybody could enlighten me.
I share your concerns, and I share your concerns because there are obviously legal matters that our legal team have received external legal advice on some of the points that Mr. Dyson has made. My inclination is to suggest that we create a task and finish group to look at this, because a task and finish group will be completely offline, and we can produce a report out of that task and finish group back to council and to some extent to Mr. Dyson, but much more to council, about what the situation is and whether we consider that there's anything that is being proposed in the Rookwood scenario as a whole that we are uncomfortable with, or alternatively that we're very comfortable with.
May I come back on what you just said? Or?
Yes, please do. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point. Is any report which we would make would not be able to be scrutinised by the public, which would be its whole purpose, because we couldn't share that information. So actually having a task and finishing group will achieve nothing other than drain resource from the rest of the council during a very busy local plan period. So no, I don't think we should have a task and finishing group, because it won't achieve the goals that you're looking to achieve.
Thank you. Councillor Jupp.
Thank you, Chairman. It was a shame that the legal advice you received, Chairman, was not made available to the members of this committee before we meet this evening. And as such, I would like to suggest that this particular topic or decision be delayed until our next meeting, when we would have had the opportunity to have had sight of that legal advice.
Sorry, I might have misexplained myself. I haven't seen any legal advice. I have just been told that the legal team of the council have received external legal advice on some of the items that are in Mr. Dyson's submission. So, for instance, they have received advice on the covenants, but I haven't seen that advice as at the moment.
If I may come back, Chairman, I think there is legal advice that should be made known to this committee before it comes to any decision as to whether or not to have a task and finish group. And forgive me, I think it would be wise for us, or prudent for us, to wait till we have sight of that.
I don't disagree with you. Councillor Donnelly.
Shouldn't this session now be moved into exempt session? Because this is a very dangerous area we're talking about at the moment. So I would imagine we should be in exempt session.
If we're just going to discuss procedure about how we handle this item, then I don't think it's exempt. If we start discussing any of these covenants or anything like that, then potentially we could need to move into exempt session. But if we're just talking about how we move this item forward, then I think I don't see that there's anything. In fact, we are demonstrating that we are taking this seriously as councillors and trying to move the issue forward. And I don't think that needs to go into an exempt session.
Thank you, Chairman. I therefore second Councillor Jupp's proposal that we seek legal advice on this and discuss this situation at the next meeting.
Okay. So is that a proposal that we move to next business and that we come back to the next committee meeting armed with that information?
Yes, Councillor Jupp proposed that we get a legal opinion on Mr. Dyson's suggestion and his facts, have it clarified and bring it back to the next meeting. We probably would have to discuss that in the exempt mode, but I'm sure the officers will guide us appropriately at that stage. It may be that the officers' legal advice may bring this matter to immediate halt, but we don't know at the moment. We haven't got a legal officer here, and also it's probably something that needs a bit of investigation. So Councillor Jupp has proposed and I second that motion.
Okay. As that's a procedural motion, I have to take that now. Can I ask Democratic Services to do a roll call vote on that?
Yeah, of course. So this will be a vote to defer this item until the next meeting, giving time for the legal advice to be relayed to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Allen.
Abstain.
Councillor Bevis.
For.
Councillor Cornell.
I think
Looks like he's dropped out.
He was leaving, wasn't he, early?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Croker.
Against.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Greening.
For.
Councillor Hay.
Against.
Councillor Jupp.
For.
Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Knoll.
For.
Councillor Potts.
For.
Councillor Saeed.
For.
Councillor Skip.
Yeah, for.
Thank you. Councillor Stannard.
For.
And Councillor Wright.
For.
Thank you. So that is 11 for, 2 against and 1 abstention. So the motion to defer has been carried.
Okay. So we will come back to that item at our next meeting. Sorry, I have to move a motion to move into exempt session for the next item, which is purely a briefing to councillors. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my wording for it.
I shall say thank you very much, everybody, and good evening.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Dyson.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I've lost my wording for the moving into exempt session. Do you have it, Joe?
Yeah. Would you like me to read it out on your behalf?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, of course. So on behalf of the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I move that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, by virtue of paragraph 3, the item and in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption